quite useful, educational, and it's really enlightening, and I really enjoyed. And what we will do, we'll quickly go back to Hassan, who had some technical challenges, just so that he can finish his talk, and then we'll allow for question and answer. So Hassan, welcome again. I'm sorry for the disruption. Thank you.
No, thank you, Mohammed. And I'm really sorry. I didn't even realize that I was disconnected while I was still going with my presentation. So my main focus today was about social media and the influence it has on Somali politics and Somali society in general. Now, this has created a lot of misinformation, if you will, a lot of political analysis. There are more than dozens of individuals around the world who gain prominence in social media, who now, in a way, are considered very influential in Somali politics. Now, those individuals are motivated by two factors. One is financial gain. So a lot of these people believe that they can gain resources and money by attracting a lot of listeners. A lot of people would click to their YouTube pages or websites, whichever they run, and in that sense are motivated by making money and getting revenue. The other one is obviously a personal promotion, not become famous, a well-known person. So clickbaiting is a big one. Those individuals have massive number of followers, hundreds of thousands of followers. If you combine the most common ones, they total millions of people following these individuals. Now, every time those people go online on Facebook, you would see they attracted thousands of people watching live, and within 24 hours or 48 hours, their listenership or viewers would mass into hundreds of thousands, if not millions. Now, these are individuals who claim to have the latest news about everything and everyone. They know they claim to know the latest information. They have the ears and the eyes of politicians. They will tell you they are kind of fly in the wall. They know the political intrigue of Somalia. So no rule applies to them. There is no ethical consideration about what they are saying. There are no boundaries. A lot of the times they peddle falsehoods, misinformations, half-truths. Baseless and groundless information are provided to the listenership, and their ultimate interest and their objective is to mass more listeners, bring more people, claim to know everything. Now, these are the motivations behind their postings and their prominence on social media. But why are they getting those tractions? What's the cause of it? Why are people drawn to these individuals and those Facebook influencers, if you will? And the reason can be attributed to two reasons. One, and the major one, is the absence of robust and credible mainstream media in Somalia, means that people will have an alternative. They will be drawn to whoever says they know what's happening, I have the information, because no one else is giving them the information they want. And what I mean by that is, whenever there's an event, there's pressing issues, there are debates on certain things. A good example could be this week or last week or next week. Most of the population, both in the country and overseas, are talking about the election process and the dispute between the federal government and the opposition candidates and the federal states and all that. But you hardly hear from those politicians, you hardly hear from the president. You hardly hear from the prime minister answering questions. And when I say hear from them is, I'm not suggesting, I'm not talking about a press release by ministry or minister or even the president's staff, but I'm talking about a credible one-on-one interviews, or maybe a press conference where the journalists can ask questions. All these are absent, and therefore will give these Facebook warriors an opportunity to put their spin on what's happening. And people are connected, as I said in previously. People in Somalia are well connected. The internet data is reasonably priced, and they want to hear what's happening in their own country. So those two reasons are: one, lack of robust and credible mainstream media, and also the silence or lack of openness and transparency by the political leaders. And when I say political leaders, I'm not implying to either today's federal leaders or state leaders, but in general, previous leaders, today's leaders, state leaders, federal leaders. They do not provide enough platform for the people to understand where they want to take the country to, what's their policies, what's their strategy, there is not enough information coming from the people in power, to the point where just a couple of years ago, the communications director, and I like to give those snippets and anecdotes just to highlight the point. The communications director for the president was asked, why isn't the president of Somalia not holding press conference or not talking to the journalists or not answering questions? And the answer from the director, communication director, was, well, he doesn't need to. He doesn't need to talk to the media. He doesn't need to talk to the journalists. Now, that could be a winning strategy if Somalia was a country who can control the news flow or the information flow. And there are a lot of countries like that who control the internet, what goes through the internet. There's no media freedom. People are not allowed to watch or see or hear things the government do not want them to hear or see or watch. But Somalia is not like that. Essentially, everyone in Somalia have access to everything, the data, the information, the websites, all these things. So for a government to adopt essentially what's a deafening silence in some of the most pressing issues, contentious issues, it's really surprising to someone like me who's a journalist and see it from distance and know people have access to information. They get information from wherever they want, but they're not getting information where they're supposed to get, which is their leaders. And again, I'm not comparing Australia with Somalia, but you cannot help see leaders in a democratic countries like Australia. If I give you an example, in Victoria here, we had a COVID-19 lockdown for weeks and weeks and weeks. And the premier of this state, Daniel Andrews, was standing in front of a packed media and journalists every day for hours and hours and hours, where he would talk about the latest and then he would answer every question. Sometimes it could take 2 hours and 3 hours. And he was doing that for 112 days in a row. Now, you can understand how COVID-19 crisis impacted countries and states everywhere. But Somalia, in a sense, as a country, have been going through crisis after crisis for the past 30 years. And for leaders to say, I actually do not need to talk to anyone is really astounding from the media perspective. And that's actually giving an opportunity to those individuals I just talked about on social media who are not responsible to anyone. Most of them reside in a relatively peaceful countries. Most of them are people who fled the civil war, escaped the civil war, went to democratic countries, countries with rule of law, ask asylum, are in the comfort of their homes. But again, their information and what they're sharing actually might lead to more division. It could undermine institutions. It could create already a polarized society, even more headache. And this is a country coming from or coming out of civil war, trying to progress to a more democratic and more peaceful country. And this is not helping. Now, in conclusion, how can that be changed? How can we address it? Better training for journalists, more openness and transparency from the leaders to discuss more about the pressing issues of the day, affording press more freedom to do their job, rules and regulations for media companies to adhere to, and changing the role of the public broadcaster, and safeguard the safety of journalists and protect them, and better communication from the government institutions, ministers, agencies, and so on. Another little anecdote, and this is again going back to why social media individuals are succeeding. There was a member of the government, a cabinet member, a minister. I know personally, I met him a few times, and he was presenting a government program. He was all over the place, social media, national television, presenting this program funded by World Bank. Now, whenever something is presented, there are always going to be people who talk about it in a negative way. Oh, this should have been done. Why is this happening? There are a lot of questions. Some of them may be legitimate. Some of them may not be legitimate. And there was a lot of that about this particular project that the minister was presenting. I don't have the number of the minister, but I had his Facebook. So I sent him a message as a journalist and I said, hey, minister, my name is so-and-so. I think we met a couple of times. I'd like to interview you about this project. Would you be able to talk to me? I'm still waiting an answer from the minister. Needless to say, he's no longer minister, but I'm not claiming that's the reason why he lost his job. But it's just the highlights that the ministers and the government officials from the top to bottom do not feel and believe that they are under no obligation, that they should talk to the people. They should